All right, guys, it's Thursday night. This is just kind of a quick update. It is almost midnight and I am exhausted. I don't have nothing to report as far as progress. And I've been out here every day. It's just trying to figure out how to run some of this stuff. It has been a huge challenge for me. It's been really tough. I had my buddy Bob over today just kind of get some secondary input on it. So anyway, I decided just to go ahead and do this. I come up with this idea, and it kind of looks a little odd, but it does have purpose. And he seemed to think it didn't look that bad either, so I'm gonna roll with it. I went with this Holly style fuel filter and brackets. The bracket spread is the same width as the frame, so I had no way of running my battery cable. So I ended up using a piece of extra of my 2x4 tubing and splitting it, and just have it tacked on here. I will be welding brackets to the frame and drilling and tapping everything with a bolt on. I'm doing that mainly so I can paint the back side of it, because you'd never be able to blow paint in there if I just welded this on. And that's actually what I was thinking about doing at first, was welding it on there, but it'd just be too hard to paint in there. Anyway, so I built basically a standoff style fuel filter system. And it's actually ended up going to be pretty cool because, if you've ever seen a lot of late model vehicles with the frame mounted fuel filter, the fuel lines are actually bent out away from the frame to the filter pretty good, because it makes it easier to get the line out when you have a little bit of, extra out there with the bends. If your filter was smashed up against your frame and your lines went straight in there, you'd have a hell of a time trying to get the line out from it once you got them loose. So this ended up working out pretty good. I just tacked it on here for mock-up, but anyway, this is a Taylor battery kit, trunk mount battery kit. It'll actually go up about there, and that fuel line will be down about there, so it'll be spaced out pretty good from each other. I do have some plastic cable clamps, and they're almost identical as the billet specialties billet line clamps that I have on my brake lines and my fuel line here. Anyway, so yeah, I've had a lot of trouble just trying to, scratching my head, trying to figure out, in pretty much 2 days of looking on the internet and looking in magazines, just trying to figure out a way to do this and make it look good and still be functional. And some guys may not dig it, but I actually think it's pretty cool. This body mount in particular for a convertible and hardtop has really created most of the havoc. That mount goes all the way to the bottom of the frame, and you got a little bit of room in between here, but once that body mount grommet's on there, you don't have much room. So I ended up cutting holes in the body mount on both sides so that battery cable passed through. It is a big hole, and I did it for these grommets. These came with the battery kit. They are kind of a hard rubber. After I paint the chassis, I'll heat these up with my heat gun just a little bit, and I'll put a little bit of 2-part epoxy on there, and I'll actually epoxy them on there so they won't ever fall out and cause some chafing and cause some issues. But this battery cable in particular, I've used this before. I really like it because I used to like it, I should say, because it says Taylor cable on it, and I'm a detail guy, so I like that on there. My first hardtop I built, that battery kit, that wording was crisp, and this one is just crappy. It's like they were almost running out of paint on the line when they were printing it on there, because it's every 6 or 8 inches or whatever. But anyway, I bought another kit and was going to use this one on my salon, and I bought another Taylor kit because this one here is about 5 years old. It's just been in the box that long here. So I bought another one, and it don't say Taylor cable on it at all. It just has letters and numbers. So I guess they don't do the Taylor cable welding anymore. Anyway, back to my system here. Anyway, I still have to drill and tap all the forward area to finish the brake and fuel line. But this battery cable in particular is very stiff. So you can bend to 90 in it, and it'll stay that shape. So it'll allow me to bend it up and around to give it some detail, to put clamps on. A factory fuel line for a Power Pack 265 V8 is outside the frame rail, and it comes out. Now, the one I looked at in particular, I just went in there and brought it up it is actually for a 57 Belair 283 with the fuel injection. From here back, I mocked it identical the way they made it. So from here back, it looks identical to the way the factory would have did it. You know, to somebody else that don't know these cars, it probably kind of looks funny, but that's the way the factory did it. That's the way I'm rolling with it. There's a lot of space between here. If that leaf spring ever come into contact with that, something is broken, you know. Anyway, from the factory right here, they come out around that leaf spring hanger and come back down into here, and they bend around this body mount. And that is a lot of 90s, and I'd have to try to duplicate all that crap. And it was just, you know, I use a coat hanger. I call them coat hangers. They're wire hangers you get from the dry cleaners. I use those, and I make my lines, especially brake lines, I always make them out of that clothes hanger first. That way you can bend it by hand and do it however you need it. Then you've got your template to go off of to bend your lines. Instead of just trying to go in and bend something and ruining 3 or 4 sticks, it's just the way I've done it for years. I did the same thing with this. But anyway, to get some softer bends in and not have so many 90s, I just kind of 45 some, and I went over the shackle hanger here. It's actually will go up a little bit further, but this top of this leaf spring hanger is actually angled pretty hard, and in this particular point, the floor has a kick up in it, so there's quite a bit of space here. So to get some service to my filter, I'd undo the line, and I'd use a little Allen wrench on this clamp in particular and remove it, and that way I'd give it enough flexibility to get it out away from the filter to get the filter off. So anyway, that's why I did the fuel line this way. Now I've got way too much fuel line here. It'll actually have another bend in it to go to my sending unit and tank. I do have a stock new replacement sending unit and gas tank. But anyway, so this is how I ran my fuel line system, and my battery cable, I'll just hard 90 it up here, and I will actually make it run where the factory fuel line would go right here, because there is quite a bit of space. And I'll run it on the frame rail here, and it'll actually come out to here, because I've got an Optima battery that's going to be right behind the back seat right here. So the battery cables will go right up to it. Anyway, so standoff style bracket system there that I wasn't sure if I was digging it. So anyway, I'm going with it now because I'm just to that point where I'm tired of messing with it. But anyway, I'll get these all clamped up, and this line will actually come down here pretty far. But they'll be about like that. Now, when I first started working on the car a few years ago, I built some body mount covers. So anyway, I drilled holes in them, and I drilled and tapped the frame. I have some 12-point ARP bolts that will bolt them on there. But I just kind of drew these out there to give you the idea. But I'll actually drill a pretty big hole, and then I'll use a cutoff wheel to go all the way to the end, so it looks like a nice, clean 3/4 oval. But I'll probably end up getting some grommets, and I'll cut them, and I'll 2-part epoxy them in after these are painted, and glue them on there, and then just cut off the excess even. That way I have a nice rubber grommet up against everything. But I kind of want them wider or a bigger opening than what these are, so I have quite a bit of space, so there's not going to be any chafing at all. But anyway, these covers are pretty much going these dog leg styles like that. I've got them for both sides on 4 mounts. Anyway, so I have to finish my fuel line system here, and I'm pretty much done after I get this clamp finished back here. I actually broke my tap off in the frame. I'm going to try to dig it out. I did work on the brake lines up here. I still have to finish to go to the other side over there. But I tried to space these evenly, make them look clean. So this is the way I did it. My body mount covers that I've shown in an earlier video that goes on my firewall, they'll come to about here. So from here forward, you'll see this. My steering box does go here, but I had it mocked up on here when I bent these, so that, you know, it almost comes in contact with the frame in this point. So this Y that I tried to make symmetrical, you know, clears it. I pretty much mocked the factory one, the way it goes up here like that, so it pretty much kind of looks stock. This one, however, on a factory car runs all the way across the front of the cradle up here. and I'm running it behind the cradle just so it's out of sight. So I have the line bent down, and then I still need to finish bending it and get it over to the other side. Anyway, every clamp that I'm putting on, I'm making sure that I have access to get to it once everything's together. That way, if anything happens in the future, I can remove it and replace a line if a flare, not sealing or whatever. But anyway, here's my steering box. I am running the factory steering box, just manual steering. I blasted this thing to clean metal and went back and painted it. This is cast iron gray, and then I just used an argent silver on the top here. Now I am going to take the nut's not tight. I'm going to take the nut off, and I'm going to paint this set screw flat black to give it a little bit more color. And this is just a chrome nut, from Ace Hardware. And then I have 12-point ARPs in here. And then I just bought a new brass plug. But anyway, I think it looks pretty clean. It'll look really good on there. But anyway, I pretty much have 12-point ARPs for everything. If these clamps, they were countersunk, or I'd have had 12 points in there. And the heads are actually too big to use in them plastic clamps for the battery cable, or I'd have used them over there. I bought a lot of packages of 1032s because that's the smallest you can buy for the 12 points. So a lot of the sheet metal on the car is 12-point ARP. What wouldn't take a bolt, I actually drilled the holes, welded square nuts, and made it take a 12-point. So it's just that, hardware to me is a detail item, so that's why I'm doing it. I'm not going to have all the fancy high-end parts on the car, but I want the details that I think stand out to show in the build. So anyway, guys, I'm pretty exhausted. I'm going to go ahead and take a bath, and I'm going to hit it. I'll come out and hit it hard tomorrow. I may work on the firewall tomorrow. I've had this thing sitting outside every day since I primered it, directly in the sun all day long, and we've had some pretty warm days. So I haven't tried scratching on it yet, so I am going to try to scratch on it a little in the morning. If it starts sanding like chalk, I'm going to go ahead and start in on it, get my putty work done, get it all blocked out, and get some 2K urethane primer on it. I do want to get the body painted first. That way that urethane paint has time to shrink a little bit so I can get it color sanded and buffed. And then I'll jump back on the chassis. What I usually do when I paint one with urethanes, like 2 days is what I usually give it, because I don't have a bake booth, I'll go in 2 days and I'll start in with like 1200 or 1500 grit paper, and I'll pretty much sand it, crack it. I call it cracking it loose. But when you start sanding a car, you start smelling that. Well, what you're basically doing is you're scratching off that top layer, and it's letting that breathe. So it helps it cure. So I cut that paint, and then I leave it. I stop with whatever I started with, 12 or 15 is what I usually start with. And then I leave it for like a week or 2 weeks in and out of the sun. And it allows all that solvent, to evaporate, and it allows that paint to cure out a little bit. And then I go back with my finer papers after a week or two. Then I color sand and buff the whole thing. And I usually don't ever have to go back and do it again, Urethane paint does keep shrinking, so but I've had good luck doing it that way. Anyway, I'm sitting here rambling on, and I am freaking exhausted. I can't even hardly feel my feet because my feet are asleep. But I've been down on this damn concrete for 2 days, and my knees are all swelled up. And I put some knee pads on, and the straps just cut circulation off around the back of the knee. So anyway, and I don't need no being on my knees jokes either there, guys. I know how you are. Anyway, I'm going to bed.